Well, this is coming from an internal document that has yet to be released, but effectively what it's saying is that roughly around 3/4 of the transportation costs that are allocated to about 8 different companies here in Afghanistan, trucking companies that is, has been misappropriated in some ways. It seems to be a series of contracts and subcontracts in which the money had been funneled down through different groups and ultimately in some cases actually ended up in the hands of the Taliban. Now, the question is, how could something like this happen? Well, it seems pretty clear that keeping track of subcontractor dollars, even in Washington, is difficult. In Afghanistan, however, it's a different story. Trucking companies often deal with very dangerous situations here in this country. They'll often subcontract out to smaller companies, which will further subcontract it to even smaller entities here in the country. Those groups will often pay security firms or even local groups for safe passage. What we've learned, however, is that some of those payments have funneled in between tribal groups and has made their way into the hands of insurgents. Monisha?
David, I know this is an investigation right now, but is there any talk on the ground of what you can do about a problem like this? I imagine it must be very difficult.
It certainly comes as great surprise to many people who were not aware of this. Authorities that we have spoken to say that they've completely and radically revamped the system, allocating now 40 different companies to sort of lessen the degree to which the United States is reliant on any one single trucking company. All 8 of these trucking companies, however, are still on the U.S. payroll. So what transpires next really remains to be seen. Monisha?
And what are the chances that this sort of a problem isn't just confined to trucking companies? What about other sorts of contracts? Getting around local communities there can be an issue, and we've already found that after this investigation.
A great question. This task force was put together at the beginning of last year, actually in June of last year, by a congressional inquiry that wanted to trace and track some of the accountability surrounding U.S. Contracts, both to local firms and to international companies operating here. The task force here focused on trucking because it is such a massive industry. Again, this constitutes roughly 70% of the transportation costs that bring supplies, food, weapons to soldiers and civilians. But there are many other industries that U.S. contracts fund here in Afghanistan. The nature of contracting and subcontracting is something that's difficult to uncover on its own. Here in Afghanistan, with the different interlocking tribal allegiances and the variety of different firms that are operating down here, makes it very difficult to track this money, both in trucking and in other industries generally.